Hey everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of the February Takeover. In this episode, your host Ashley Pigott and wedding planner Melissa Baum will walk you through how they got started on their wedding planning journey. They also discuss the importance of community support if you're just getting started. To wrap up the episode, Ashley and Melissa leave us with some of the misconceptions about wedding planning. This is a fantastic episode for anyone who is considering the path into the wedding industry. As always, I want to thank you for watching, and remember to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss next Wednesday's episode. Now, if you're ready, let's go.
Well, welcome back. My name is Ashley Pigott of Ashley Pigott Events. I own a luxury wedding and event company here in Toronto, specializing in tented and private estate weddings. And I am welcoming back for the second time, Melissa Baum of Melissa Baum Events. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Always happy to have you. For those of you who don't know Melissa, Melissa is also a top wedding planner in the city and plans some of the most incredible and jaw-dropping events that we have seen here in Toronto. So very, very happy to have her by my side today. And today we are going to chat a little bit about entry into wedding planning, like how to get started, our story, sort of where we started from, and hopefully share some insight for any of those listening today who are thinking of kind of taking that step. A little less bridal focus, a little more industry focused today, but hoping that we can share some insight and help you get started.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thanks for joining me again today. This is a second of our series of 4 for the February takeover of the VIP. I'm glad to have you.
I'm very happy to be here and can't wait to share a very different but equally, valid entries into this industry. And we're both at a place, where we're happy and we took really different roads to get here.
Totally different roads. So that's actually where I thought I would get started, because you and I came into wedding planning like from actual polar opposites of the entry into this. I think there's sort of a million ways to get in, but you and I have two really interesting and probably really relevant stories to a lot of people. So Mel, I obviously know your story, but I think we should share it with everyone. Why don't you tell us a little bit about sort of what you were doing, how you fell in love with weddings, and then of course, like how you made the leap to decide that this is what you wanted to do.
Sure. So I've been in love with weddings since the early 2000s. Big part in thanks to the ABC Bachelorette wedding that appeared on television.
Trista?
Yeah.
Trista and Ryan, of course.
Yes. And,
OGs.
$4 million wedding, and thought they all looked like that. So I just was in love with weddings ever since then, and would start saving photos on my computer in folders for my own wedding, things like cakes, bridesmaids dresses, bridal dresses that I would find. There wasn't Pinterest then, so I don't even know where I found those pictures, come to think of it.
Google Images.
Google Images maybe. So anywho, fast forward to my final year in university. I was obtaining my business degree specializing in accounting, and I decided to start a wedding blog to just showcase all the pictures I had amassed and present party and wedding ideas. So I started a blog. I would just share it on Twitter and Facebook. So just kind of my peers would see the link, and if they were to share it, then amazing. But it was, mostly just my community seeing it. And I went on to be an accountant for 3 years. It wasn't for me. Planned parties on the side and resigned from being an accountant and took party planning full time.
Amazing. That's so awesome. And so how long was it from when you started your blog and sort of kind of took that step into actually formalizing Melissa Baum Events?
So that was 3 years. So the blog started in 2011. I maintained it all through working as an accountant, and obviously it gained more traction as time went on, and more people asked me to plan their party. So I was doing smaller things, 40th birthday parties at home, a baby shower, baby naming, or bris, or those type of events. And in 2014 I got married myself, and also a few really good friends took a chance on me and let me plan their weddings.
Thanks, friends.
Yeah, thank you. We're grateful. And once that started rolling, I'm like, okay, we got something here. So I quit accounting, and it was crazy. I guess word gets out fast. Once I was doing this full-time, business just picked up steam. I'm sure people were reluctant to hire me knowing that I had a full 9 to 5 intense job during the week. So I'm happy I made the leap because it was scary at the time, not knowing where your next, paycheck would come from, but it all worked out.
Yeah, I mean, it's always that, the fear of the unknown. I think every entrepreneur who's sort of getting started in those initial times in their life are thinking like, I've got a steady paycheck right now. Maybe I have benefits. Maybe I have amazing work perks, which were very similar to the camp that I lived in when I made the decision. So it is a really tough one to make, but obviously, there's so many positives to making that first step. And do you think, like, obviously you came into this with like the love of weddings and inspired by sort of your own wedding was maybe like the tipping point to it, and then gave you this like experience into it from a different point of view, like you went through it as a bride as well, at the same time. So that must have been a really kind of cool, blend of the two things.
Yeah, like I did it because I loved it, and I'm still doing it because I love it. So, fortunately, that's the main motivator. It wasn't, about, of course, it was to earn a living, but that wasn't the goal at first. And at first, going through like a business school background, I didn't understand how I could make money doing this. And, it all kind of worked out, but it was all driven by passion for it.
Totally.
That was really the name of the game.
Totally. And faith in yourself, right? That you could do it. So
Yeah.
my story also is, the same thing, taking that leap of faith. I started in hospitality and worked years in restaurants, and then into catering, and then into kosher catering. And then I went into, high-end hotels. I spent years working with kind of small businesses and wanted to experience sort of that corporate life, what it felt like to sort of have, if you worked a Saturday, you sort of banked a Saturday off. That like wasn't my world for the first number of years in the industry, which just isn't natural in hospitality. So I lived that corporate life for a while. And actually it was when I had my first daughter that I really took the leap to make, that big decision that I wasn't going back after my mat leave, and that I was going to take this passion of mine, which I also had, and make it full time. The love of weddings for me sort of came kind of midway into my career in hospitality. I had worked in catering for so long, and eventually took over a venue for the catering company that I was working for. So because of that, I celebrated weddings every weekend, and that love just like grew. The environment that you're in, being a part of something that's so special, that's so memorable, all the reasons why we all love what we do definitely led me there as well. And I did have to make that decision. I had a great full-time job with perks and benefits, and I worked in luxury hotels, so the travel perks were amazing. Like, it was certainly not an easy decision to make, but you can't not follow a passion like this. At least give it a try, right? And that's sort of where I went into it. I thought, I'm going to give it a try. I can always go back. Like, hotels will always be there, or catering companies will always be there. And my skill set was one that really, I think, led me into really becoming specialized in some of the areas of weddings that I do focus on. So, both two completely different starts, and, from polar opposite sides of the spectrum. But I think, it just proves that no matter where you are or where you're getting started, that you still can get to a place where you're kind of living and breathing this passion every day.
Yeah, and I think if you were to like Google how to get started as a wedding planner, a very common response you'll see is work in a catering company for a catering company or a hotel. So, you kind of took what appears to be the textbook route, even though it's hardly that. But and then I feel like my route was even the millennial Gen Z approach, start a website.
Get married, be inspired, and go for it, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
I think they're both common threads for a lot of people. So I think the next question that a lot of people might ask us, and I'll ask you, is how did you really take it from, having your full-time gig, doing this on the side, having your friends really put that faith into you to do stuff small. You then made the leap to make it full-time. So how did you sort of scale it? Like, where did you go from there? How did you become the newbie on the block to now, like, the top name in the city?
So I think it was all just learning from experience and honestly some trial and error. Not that any client felt, but that I did. I remember the first few weddings, I worked them alone.
Yeah.
I didn't know you bring assistants with you.
Quickly learned that lesson, right?
Yeah,
Me too.
first wedding I ever did, I folded all the napkins. So I think it was just again like experimenting. So I realized, okay, these days don't work as efficiently by myself. I can't be everywhere at once. So then I brought on an assistant to help me. And at first it was just weekend assistant. So I would tell her the dates, we had weddings and we'd show up and execute them. So that was really the beginning. And I still did all the admin work myself. And then like I said, as word got out that I was doing it full time and my calendar got busier, the role of that assistant on the weekends grew. I realized that I needed help during the week too, just to manage all the emails and get back to people efficiently. And it's crazy how it just kind of clicks. I mean, I don't really have, some magic business training that I used. It was just, you just kind of see where things are going in the workload and it just kind of becomes apparent. And I always think about that even in big businesses. I'm like, how do they know they need a team for this and a team for that? And, because you live and breathe your business, it just evolves and you know it better than anyone else. So yeah, it evolved into having, someone full-time to assist me during the week in addition to on weekends. And that's how we were able to, manage so many clients and still maintain our customers like services number. We're in the service industry, it's number one, and getting back to people quickly and efficiently was all really important. So
yeah, I think that's really important and also really difficult. Like, I did the same thing. I started off on my own. You do your first wedding by yourself and realize you'll never do that again, ever, no matter what. I think we all sort of start there. And I think support is a really important part that maybe people don't necessarily realize. Like, I think a lot of us sort of wear the face of our companies. And we'll talk a little bit about naming our companies after ourselves. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but I think it becomes your baby. It really truly becomes a baby. And so it is really hard sort of to start to let go when you start to see the volume go up. And because you and I both feel very strongly about customer service and sort of, response times and things like that are big for us, letting parts of the business go for somebody else to help support can be a really difficult piece of sort of growing and scaling. For me, it was challenging. I definitely like to have my hands in on everything that's going on with my clients, but as I evolved and kind of found the right person to support me in that role, the administrative side of things is really something that I don't think people understand how much of our time is spent just emails and phone calls and back and forth and rental orders and lots of stuff that takes a lot of time, a lot of fresh eyes, and you'll need support at some point to help you navigate through that so that you can do what you do best, which is being client facing and, answering the big questions and sort of being involved in the big picture side of things. So I'm the same. I do have somebody who helps me with I used to pre-COVID, have someone who assisted me with the administrative side of things, which really just allowed me to do what I do best. And it took me a long time to really get to a place where I could structure myself to realize that my time is more valuable and better spent doing other things like sales, like servicing my clients, like all the things that, maybe an administrative assistant couldn't necessarily do, some of the logistics and, stuff like that. But then I'm not up until, 2:00 in the morning, just responding to emails and doing sort of the administrative side of things. So I think that's a really big kind of hidden piece that people don't necessarily see all the time, but is really valuable to the success of a business.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things I do want to talk about is naming your business after yourself.
Okay.
So it's kind of one of those, I don't know, you hear different sides of the coin on this one. Some people will say it's like, totally a business fail. Some people will say it's a great way to sort of personalize your experience with your clients. I would love to get your insight or opinion on this since we've both done it.
Yeah, I actually flip-flopped on it before. So of course I originally and still am Melissa Baum Events. And then about 2 years into it, I had a change of heart. I was going to
Okay.
change the name and take my name out of it. One, in the hopes that I could scale the business more that way.
Mhm.
And then two, there's a lot of planners in the city who share the same name as me. And
There's a few
I
people around.
I wanted to clear up any confusion. And not all of us sound the same. So I dabbled with it. I think, I never really fully launched the new name. I was just everyone just referred to me as like Melissa Baum Events or Mel Baum Events when, everyone calls me Mel when we get friendly.
Yes.
So I just couldn't take myself out of that. I was honestly too nervous to make the leap to change it.
Because you
But
felt like you had
nonetheless,
established it under your name and your
yes,
name was the brand. And so changing
yeah,
it could be now confusing. Okay.
exactly. Now that I'm never really changed it and aren't considering it now, I don't regret naming it after myself. I still, it's really important to me to still be the face of the business, and it's still my baby, and I deal with all the clients, and I don't want there to be any sense that I've lost touch with,
Right.
with that. So I know there's pros and cons, but I'm still happy with the decision. How about you?
I'm happy with the decision. I mean, I think obviously, as you think about it as a business, is very different. Like if you remove yourself from it and think about it as a business, okay, well, my name's on my business. What if one day I want to sell my business? Or what if one day, I want to bring on a team and it's more than just Ashley Pigott? Or, I just think that those are questions as a business I think about. But when I think about it as myself internally, like immersed into my business, my other baby, I can't
Yeah.
imagine not having my name on it because I live and breathe it. Like it is mine. I'm in touch with every single client, everything is me. So it would sort of seem strange now for it not to be me. But I know that's a conversation. Obviously, a lot of wedding planners name their companies after themselves. And so always just curious to see,
Yeah.
just thoughts on that from a business side of things.
Mhm.
So one of the things I really find interesting and talk about this a lot when I have newer entry level planners who reach out to me on Instagram or by email, want
Yeah.
to chat. Some of the things we talk about are things that I think are misconceptions about what we do and our role and sort of what it all actually is. I think we have the conversation about obviously the most famous movie, The Wedding Planner, about, we get asked all the time, well, are you J-Lo? And, on site and all of that kind of stuff. And while, yes, I wear a headset and a fanny pack. And, if someone needed me to feed them their speech, like, yes, we can do all of those things that are in the movie, but it definitely doesn't look like that all the time.
No, especially the part where you're wearing a suit and heels. That part.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've had the same conversation with people. There's the Instagram side of the business, and you
Mhm.
see the end product and what feels glamorous. And listen, we have a lot of fun getting to that point. Don't get me wrong, and that's a very rewarding and fulfilling part of our job. I think seeing it all come together. A lot of wedding planners, if you were to ask them, like, why are you in this business? It's the reward at the end.
Yes.
Seeing your clients so happy, making their vision come to life, even seeing your hard work come to life. Not to make it about us, but
Totally. We've spent a year working on
yeah,
this project. So yeah, it definitely, the completion stage feels really good. It's like we did it.
yeah. And we probably worked harder at that than the bride did. And, I
In our
mean that.
scenarios. Yeah.
Right. Well, all of that is amazing. I think there's the many hours and stressful hours of work going into making those pictures come to life and making those bride's dreams happen. And yes, you have difficult conversations with, your vendors sometimes, and things don't go as planned and things end up costing more, and you have to relay that information to your client and having those hard conversations. And even down to like family politics. I've been roped into some very deep conversations, personal conversations that you don't think you're signing up for. I mean, I wish I had a psych degree a lot of the time. It's heavy stuff, and they confide in you, and it's I take it as a compliment, but sometimes, you know, it's not my area of expertise. I don't necessarily have the answer to the drama. And
Well, and sometimes they're looking to us because they assume we've had a client who's been through it before.
right,
And, you know, family dynamics are certainly very, very unique. And there are often times where we've been in a scenario, you know, where you've got like maybe the moms don't like each other, or maybe the bride and the mom, like, you know, like there's all kinds of things that go on. And certainly we've sort of feel like we've seen it all until we get something new thrown at us. And it definitely does take things, you know, into a different situation when you do have to be pulled into that stuff, because it does happen quite often. I think you know, obviously the biggest misconception I think is the Instagram versus reality. Like people really do see the beautiful things that we're creating and these magical experiences and environments that are being designed for these couples. And it really doesn't do justice to the amount of time and effort that goes into getting there. And listen, some weddings, even if they're like the most intricate, are really, really lovely and amazing experiences. And sometimes they're really, really hard and they're like painstaking to get to. And those are the ones that feel even better when it's all done and the room's all set and your clients come in and they're so happy and you're like, oh, like it just that level of relief of like, oh my goodness, they're so happy we got here. So I think that that's a big misconception, is that it's all tastings and floral mock-ups and, you know, all of that kind of stuff that you sort of see in the movies and on Instagram and don't necessarily get the inside scoop. And maybe that's something that we should do a better job of when things sort of open up and get back to normal. Is, you know, I get a lot of people in the question boxes on Instagram saying, you know, show behind the scenes. We want to see more of the process and stuff like that, which I would like to actually do when we can do that, because I think that that will shed some light onto maybe the not so glamorous side of things, like the days spent in the dungeon of your office, just like trying to get through the inbox, like, you know, checking rentals, which is like one of my most stressful days, like a week before a wedding, like going through line by line on your like 200-page rental order, counting every fork and every single thing, you know, especially for me, because sometimes I'm a couple hours out of the city. So like if we forget something, we can't get it. So I think that a lot of that would be beneficial for people to see, and just sort of how we get from point A to point B. So hopefully you guys listening can hold us accountable to that and help us when things start ramping up, show you some more of those behind the scenes, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think the wedding industry has debunked that a picture tells 1,000 words. It
Totally
actually tells the opposite.
The ones who live in it though, and that's the thing. I think it's the people who are seeing it, who maybe are scrolling and don't necessarily sort of live and breathe what we're breathing, that they don't necessarily realize like what went into, you know, a specific bow tied on, you know, a napkin or something like that, that you painstakingly tie because you need to make sure that they're all done exactly the same.
Right.
Like you with the napkins on your first wedding. Like you did them because you wanted to make sure they were done perfectly.
Right. Or even, you know, again, back to even just the family dynamics, even seeing a picture of, you know, everyone up at the altar might look like, you know, love and rainbows, but there might be more behind that picture than
Totally.
you know.
There usually is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So then I would love to segue into, because I think it's a natural flow into, let's share some insight into, so, you know, we've got an entry-level planner, someone who's decided whether they're coming from school or another area in the industry, or they're a bride, or maybe a sister who just planned her sister's wedding or something like that. And they're about to get started. What would be, you know, a couple of really valuable pieces of advice that you would share with someone who is looking to get started, looking to jump in and get their feet wet?
So of course, social media is as important as ever. It's so funny because when you and I started out, Instagram didn't exist and it wasn't prevalent the way it is now. So of course, I think getting yourself up on social, making a presence there, and really putting yourself out there, whether that means reaching out to, you know, people you admire, anyone in the industry, whether it's in your community or not, and really starting to establish who you want to be online. I'm a really, really big believer in what you put out is what you get back. So I think, you know, it's, no one's a mind reader. They're not going to know what you're trying to do unless you tell them, or who you are unless you tell them. So I think it's knowing who you are, putting that out there publicly, and also just not being like the hustle. Just don't be shy. Reach out to people, make connections. You never know where your next referral will come from. And that's really, I think so many of us can speak to how word of mouth is such a big part of our business. And, establishing that is a great way to start.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that obviously those first few weddings that you do get, like you have an opportunity there because they're going to be the people who are sharing your name before anybody else. So I think that that is really a really valuable piece of advice. I think the other thing that I really speak to a lot, and I guess it definitely relates back to my background, is some of the stuff that I learned before I even got into weddings were so valuable to me once I started. So, things like being in catering, running a venue, maybe you want to try to, intern for a florist. But I think like seeing all of those different sides and behind the scenes of those very big parts of our job will really help you be a better planner. It also allows you to establish relationships, you get some experience. But I think that like not being afraid to do the dirty work, like the grunt work. Like I was the person, ripping open the skids and counting forks and stuff when I worked for other wedding planners at the very beginning. I think that also is a really good thing. Reach out to planners who you love, who you look up to, you respect, you like their work, and see if they have opportunities. I mean, they might not have one right now, but if you put yourself out there and sort of make your email shine, I have a whole folder of emails from people who sent me who, I don't have a spot for right now, but when things do, I'd love to go back to that folder and look at some of these people because they had, they made an impression. So I think don't be afraid to reach out. Obviously planners aren't, actively working right now, just with everything going on. But I think that that's a really good thing to look at and potentially diversify your skill set, learn the ins and outs of all the other sides of things, because ultimately that experience will help you later on. And I think that building, that relationship is important. Some of your first leads when you first get started are going to come from, the people that people call first. So like a venue, a photographer, some of my first weddings came through those resources because they were industry colleagues of mine who, referred me, took a chance on me again. Thanks guys. And, and that's sort of how it was built and grew. So I think that those are really great ways to get in. You might not work for a wedding planner right away, but like you might easily be able to get a job as like, a part-time server, or maybe you're working, as a schlepper. Like, to be honest, like that's what I was doing for the first couple of years was schlepping.
Yeah, or at a florist, helping them, or something in that capacity. And someone actually, you never know, a planner could meet you at a wedding because you're working for someone else, but be so impressed by you and kind of poach you.
Well, I did that actually with one of the members of my team. He was the on-site supervisor from the staffing agency on a massive, massive event we did. We totally hit it off. I was so impressed by him, his demeanor, how he handled things under stress, that like the next week he was at a wedding with me, and he's been with me ever since.
Right, exactly. So just always put your best foot forward. You never know, who's watching, and you're only as good as the last event that you did. Yep. And that's your marketing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's talk a little bit about marketing then. And you mentioned Instagram, and I think obviously most of us use that for the majority of our marketing. It's free for the most part. And it really does allow you like a direct connection to your audience, and it is a full-time job. Like it's so much work. But I think it is probably the most relevant marketing tool that someone who's new has available to them, because it costs no money. Obviously a referral from, people that you actually know is great, but getting your name out there and sort of building an online presence and a brand it is a great way to get started. Instagram, that platform, I think is really, really helpful. It's been very helpful for me.
For sure. And we want to talk about our newest recent platform that we've been using. So we're both Clubhouse users.
I would call myself an addict. Like I'm like 2 weeks in, and I find this platform really, really amazing. So I speak to Build Your Squad all the time, right? And that is one of the things we're talking about with sort of these, vendor relationships and building them to get started. But Clubhouse is like this new, amazing platform to share and speak and have like direct points of contact to people that you might not necessarily have ever had the chance to. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. It's, it depend, no matter what industry you're in, but it's, specifically the wedding industry, we've seen so many different groups form, and there's always conversations going on about, you could listen in when a topic interests you. And I've walked away with some great tidbits in my one week of playing on it. And I've already made some connections, reached out to someone already.
We've done a talk. We also, we're like starting to host, which is super fun. But I think that also is such a great way to market yourself, because it is exposing you. I think right now it seems a little bit more industry based. So I'm not sure kind of how that will flow, and if our brides are going to then, I don't know. The future of this app is a little unknown, but I think it's really a really cool way to market yourself now on a different platform to an entirely new audience.
Right. And it's not visual at all, probably the antithesis of Instagram, which is actually refreshing, and it's nice.
Well, it puts the content to the forefront, right? Like, again, like we said, these photos are very Instagram versus reality situations. So I think you sort of remove that visual side of things, and you allow people to immerse themselves and really like soak in the content and soak in the discussions. I've been a part or listened to some really incredible conversations, and some of them have not been wedding related at all. I jump into a lot of business rooms and stuff like that, and just to see a different perspective. And again, like, the community that's on there is entirely different. So I find that now, even on Instagram, the followers I've got in the last week or so are people like not at all intertwined into the circles or in the Toronto area. They're more international, in the States, which is really cool.
Yeah. It's an amazing way to connect and, stay relevant in a different way, which is really nice.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we've got these new entry-level planners, or I guess maybe I'm generalizing that. Maybe, somebody who has been in the business for a while is maybe looking for some insightful tips. And so I'm curious if you have, moving forward, we're sort of breaking the dawn of like a new world, let's call it. Everything will now be, reference pre-COVID, post-COVID. So post-COVID, let's talk like a couple years away, when like things are roaring again and we're into those roaring 20s. What do you think, what do you think about the world of wedding planning? What do you think about kind of our market, our community of planners, the Toronto area, weddings in general? What insight might you have to somebody who's getting started, who in a couple of years will be in the thralls of weddings when they're back to their heydays?
Yeah. I think there could be definitely some COVID aftermath, in the sense that people, some people see COVID as a blessing towards their wedding, and they like how it's affecting it, whether that means smaller, more intimate, what have you. I think some of that can be trickle effect. But I also think, you referenced the Roaring 20s. I can see a lot of Gatsby-esque parties in our future too. So I kind of see both sides of the coin. And I think it could be an opportunity, depending on, as a new planner or as a planner in general, like what you're passionate about. Maybe that's where you focus your efforts. If you want to carve out a niche for yourself, potentially in a new type of celebration or wedding, there could be opportunity there. But maybe it's the optimist in me. I'm hoping that, the big celebrations come back, and I do think they will.
I think they will too.
I think, people are also eager to they want to live life. So
totally. I think the appreciation for life and just like all of that will be back. And I think for any of those planners who are maybe just getting started, or maybe got started just pre-COVID and sort of had to put the brakes on a bit, I think what I would say is you're actually coming into this with a really incredible perspective, because you have no preconceived notions of what things were and how we did things. So, mentally wrapping your head around doing things entirely new, you might actually be able to come into this community with really interesting and new ideas that we might not be able to as easily get to, because we're sort of coming at it through a different tunnel, right? Like, we've lived and breathed one way for so long, as innovative as we can kind of get, as many brides that tell us they want something different and then end up with the exact same wedding as, their bestie. It's just the way it happens.
Right.
But I think that now, any of those planners who are sort of new and fresh and, don't necessarily have any of, those past experiences might actually breathe some fresh air into the industry in the next couple of years. So I'm hoping that that's something that we can see from some of these newer planners coming in, because we need it. It's good. It's good for growth for our little community of wedding planners to see that.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one thing I guess we'll end on, and it's something, I guess, a theme we've touched on quite a bit, and the fact that you and I are sitting here next to each other virtually really speaks to it. And I think as a wedding planner, young, old, new, been around forever, I think it's really important to find your squad. Like, find people who you align with as a business, or as, it doesn't necessarily have to be another wedding planner, but I think it's really valuable to have a community, whether it's 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, but people who live and breathe the same thing you do every day. Like, I can talk to my husband about, my job and my day to day, but like, he's never really going to understand. Or when something kind of happens or bubbles up and I'm like, oh, what is the best way to handle this? I'm like, I would love some advice. Having someone to call who has no judgment, who truly just wants to work through it with you and help you to be better and to do the right thing, I think is a really important and really valuable asset to your own growth and the growth of your company, of yourself as a planner, as just an individual. I think that's really, really important. So I would say find your squad, hold them close, respect each other, and support each other.
And I would say in building that squad, again, if there's someone you admire their business or on social media, at times I've been even like intimidated to reach out to people. Mm-hmm. They're likely just a small business just like you. Because you admire them, you put them on this platform, or you just like assume, you always assume someone that you admire is like older than you. Totally. Or what have you. And I remember even reaching out to that person I met on Clubhouse. Like, I'm like, oh, she seems, so much more established, this, that, and the other. Like, she was very happy to take my call. Couldn't have been nicer. For all I know, we're the same age and an ask. But it's just, don't be shy, and really just don't be shy.
Well, I also think people, I mean, for me anyways, I'm speaking for myself, hence why Corinne probably asked me to take over the podcast. I love to talk. I love to share. Like, Clubhouse for me is such a great platform because I love to talk. I love to share. I love to give advice. I love to learn. Like, I love to ask questions. And I think all of that is really, really valuable for somebody who's getting started, and somebody who's, for anybody, to be perfectly honest. You should never be feeling like you've learned everything and you know everything, because you don't. But for me, like, when someone reaches out on Instagram and says, I just love to bend your ear, like, I just would love to, ask you a couple of questions, I absolutely love it. And I will spend an hour in my DMs going back and forth with them, because I really, it's just something that I really love. I wished when I had started that there was a community like that for me, and there wasn't. Like, when you and I both got started, there was not a call your planner friend and ask a question about what is listed in their contract and how yours, and what do you include and what are your services, and have you ever been to this venue, do you have pricing, can you share this or that. That was not the world that we sort of started in. And I think that hopefully what we've started to build over the last couple of years, and many others in our industry, will help to bring that forward, because it's really, really important.
100%.
Totally. Well, on that note, thank you very much for being here with me. I can't imagine having anyone else here with me along this 4-episode takeover for the VIP Collective. Thank you, Corinne, for having us, and letting us share some insight. Hopefully today's topic provided some more information and value to those who are sort of just getting started in the industry. And, we are welcome to have you. We wish you all the best and all the success in your business ventures. And hopefully we will see you soon.
Yeah, and if you're listening and don't be shy to reach out.
Don't be shy to reach out at Melissa Baum and at Ashley Pigott Events. We're always happy to chat and share some insight.
Okay.
All right, Mel, have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Hello.
Cheers.